Dan Kahn. So good to see you, man.
It's great to see you too, Eric.
Um, I'm doing this project as like, what have people been up to in the last 15 years? And you've had a quite momentous 15 years. And, for some folks, I've talked to people and I've like learned a lot about their story. For some people like yourself, I'm aware loosely of the story. But I'd love to have you maybe share with me and share with the class your own story as you see it since graduation.
Yeah, happy to, and obviously feel free to ask any questions. Uh, Graduation 15 years ago was pretty interesting. I think while we were graduating, I applied to 30 plus jobs, and I think I got one or two. And so I ended up working in San Francisco for a startup with about four people that was building the feedback tabs on the side of websites. It was kind of the original one
Yeah.
of those where you could click and you could offer some feedback to the product or whatnot. It's a company called User Voice.
Mm.
And that was my first foray into startups and kind
Yeah.
of technology. And I worked there for a couple of years before deciding I would try and start my own company. First starting a company called Exec, which was on-demand personal assistance and house cleaning services
I remember
in
Exec.
SF.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cleaned a lot of toilets in while I was dog fooding my own product, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, but then after that, started working on self-driving cars with a friend of mine, which a company that became Cruise or is Cruise, building self-driving cars in the U.S.
Yeah.
Then go ahead.
A lot to dig in on. That's a lot of pretty interesting stuff. First, just to kind of come back to the Exec, if you were at your first gig for a couple of years, you couldn't have been 27, 28 when you started Exec. It takes a lot to start a company. And I'm like, I know Cruise went on to do amazing things, but like go back to the Exec time when you were taking your first leap to starting a company. Like what was going through your head? And I'm sure that there are other people in our Claremont class that have either started their own business or are thinking about it. Like, what would you tell those people who are thinking about it?
Yeah, so I worked at User Voice for 2 years, or a little less than 2 years. And
Wow.
so I think I was 23 or 24
Wow.
when I left. But the company was small. So,
Yeah.
when I joined, it was four people. And when I left, I think it was like 8 people or 10
Yeah.
people. And so, I had been working at a startup kind of in this environment and learned like, okay, this is what it's about. Like I was doing everything from the sales to the onboarding to office management and other things. And at the time I was like, well, if I'm going to be doing this stuff anyways, I might as well do something that I am really excited about. And hopefully get, a chance at a bigger payday, right, as
Yeah.
well. And it was something that I could do because, at 24, you don't really have any bills. Like you
Yeah.
go eat and, in SF, there's a lot of events and other things where you can get free food and drinks and,
Yeah.
and have a car. So, not a whole lot to pay for.
Yeah.
I think that's probably obviously very different now for a lot of people, including
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I remember actually you hosting me and a couple people to play beer pong at your place in SF. And I remember, I think you and I were partners and something happened on Exec where maybe something crashed or there were a lot of requests and you going from like shooting to like pulling over and like triaging some issue and me thinking, and we were probably 25, 26. I don't know. This is seemingly so long ago. And I was amazed that first had like the maturity, honestly, to like throw yourself fully into this business and also for you to like keep living your life. You were hosting friends and you're running this business. I remember being so impressed at that party at the beer pong table with how you were doing. It was like a Saturday night,
Well, you are very generous. I feel like there's lots of professions, not just the startup world, where people are on call a
True.
lot.
Totally.
But I think for me, it was something that was fun. It was exciting. I was
Yeah.
running the operations at Exec, and so there were things that we had to do round the clock, kind of all the time. But it's kind of your baby at the time, and want to
Yeah.
make sure that it's going well. So I'm just glad I was able to still hang out, and it wasn't all time consuming.
Yeah. I'm grateful you were able to hang out too. It was a fun party, as I recall. Um, so then you, of course, founded Cruise, and that's obviously a little bit different than like on demand, help, right? And I'd say like, look, Cruise is one of two companies that have, in my eyes, like been the future, like truly inventing the future. You would hear about autonomous cars, maybe in science fiction growing up. You would hear about AI, not just in science fiction, but also like kind of in the zeitgeist. Talk to me about going from Exec to then founding Cruise.
Yeah, well, we went from what I would consider high labor intensive to where you're sending people to do certain tasks to if we did our jobs right, hopefully eliminating a lot of
Yeah.
people in a pretty mundane task. Um, and to be fair, it wasn't my idea from the get go. It was something that my co-founder wanted to do, and I thought would be really interesting and fun. And if it worked,
Yeah.
it'd be great. If it didn't work, it'd be a really fun story to try and build.
Yeah.
And so we set off to go and do that with a number of other people along the way, and it was pretty complicated. I worked there for 10 years, and we kind of just got our product out into the world, and in a way that we believe was safe enough to actually sit in the back seat. So for everyone who hasn't experienced it, might experience it in the future, you actually couldn't sit behind the front wheel, or can't sit behind the front wheel. You're
Hmm.
a passenger in this car, and you have no way to control it other than your iPhone to say, "Hey,
Wow.
take me here." And at the peak, we were doing thousands of rides a day, and we'll probably get back there at some point.
Yeah. That's amazing. And it's amazing to see because obviously there's like, if I go to SF and I'm in Boston now, but like when I'm in SF, I see these self driving cars and it's like, wow, Dan Kahn helped usher this era in. Um, what do like, what did you, I'd love to talk so much about your experience at Cruise. What would you say is the thing that you know now that maybe you wish you knew when you started?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, and maybe this is part of why I was able to go and do this, is that everything, if you think of it it's in a large scale, can feel very daunting, right? Self-driving
Mm,
cars, like where do you start? You've got a whole vehicle that you've got to build and make sure is safe, and make sure is going to be better than the average human driver. And if you look at that, you might never start building it
mm,
because that task might seem so enormous. But for us, it was all about breaking it into smaller problems along the way. And any problem can be broken into enough smaller problems that eventually you can be like, okay, I can do that thing in a day, or,
yeah.
a week or whatever. And you start to add those things together. So that's something that I think, I learned along the way, but also, because I didn't know a lot, I was willing to just dive in. And I think that was extremely helpful in my
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Um, I remember the day that Cruise was acquired. Tell me about that day from your perspective.
It was an interesting day because, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
I'm sure.
So I think the day we announced was some day in February of like 2016, I think. And we had been talking with General Motors for about a month before that.
Okay.
Had a bunch of negotiations along the way. There's some stories out there already on the internet and whatnot about how that all
Yeah.
went down. You can look at them up. But, we were a 40-person company at the time. And I remember going into our office. No one else knew. It was just me and Kyle, and we had kind of gone through the entire process to get to the point where they were willing to sign the term sheet and kind of announce the deal. Um, and it was funny. We got everyone together in the morning. Everyone was super excited. I think we popped open a bottle of champagne, and then, 30, 40 minutes later, we're like, okay, I guess we should just go back to work.
Amazing.
Um, because we hadn't built the car yet, and we were
Sure.
like, okay, well, what else do we do? Like, it's 9 a.m. No one really wants to get like hammered.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
and so I remember one of our early investors, Sam Altman, came in a little bit later, I think at like noon, and he came in with a couple bottles of liquor, and he's like, looks around, he's like, I thought you guys were acquired. Like, what's going on? Everyone's just sitting at their desks. We had a party later that night, but it was a pretty low key day actually. Like,
Wow.
people, came in. We told everyone the terms. We had a glass of champagne, and we kind of just sat back down and went back to work.
That's amazing. That's like you can't imagine a better culture then because that's like so mission oriented. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was
Um,
fun.
yeah. So, you're with Cruise. I'd love to also talk about maybe like not just your professional life, but things that have happened personally to you. My understanding, and we were talking just before we started recording. I heard a baby in the background. Talk to me about
Yeah,
your family life.
yeah. So I lived in San Francisco for, I don't know, 12 years, 10, 12 years, something like that. Then when COVID happened, I ended up moving to Florida. It was
Mm.
supposed to be a temporary thing. But I moved here with my fiance. At the
And was
time, we were
that
now
just like
married.
a warmer weather, easier life kind of thing?
It was, she is originally from Florida,
Okay.
and we had been looking, or we just got a kind of a like a vacation property out here, and so we're like, let's go live there while SF is locked down. And SF
Yeah.
was, pretty aggressive about their lockdown. So we came out here where, you're not next to anyone like you are in SF, um, to a town called Crystal River, which is 2 hours north of Tampa. It's like kind of known for the manatees, but nothing else.
Oh,
It's
all
like a
right.
town of like 4,000 people. So we were
Yeah.
like in a river house there, just like hanging out.
Cool.
And we thought that would be a couple weeks until the lockdowns went away. And then that also ultimately turned into a few years. We ended up moving to Atlantic Beach in Jacksonville
Okay.
a couple of years ago when we wanted to have a family. But that's the long story to say, I've now got a 2 year old. He'll be two in a couple of weeks.
Amazing.
And
Claremont
another,
class of what would that be? 2044.
yeah, you'll have to do the math for me, but yeah, yeah. And then I got another, he's, he's great. And then I've got a daughter coming mid May.
Congratulations. That's very soon. Do you
Thank
feel,
you.
I mean, I
Yeah,
guess if this is your second, you're probably a little bit more ready.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
stress out about a lot, so be
Does the
nice.
2 year old, like, what's the level of understanding that your 2 year old has that he's about to be a big brother?
I think he knows at least enough, right? Like, we ask him, like, "Hey, are you ready? Are you going to help with these types of things?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." And then I'm like, "Oh, what do you want to name her?" And he's like, "Car." I'm like,
Right. Right. Right.
I don't think that that's going to work, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll see. We can
That's
slide
awesome.
that in somewhere.
Yeah. Um, you know, kids, you're obviously also married. How did you meet your wife?
We actually met in SF.
Okay.
She was working at a different startup. She just moved to SF, and we met at a party. Actually,
Amazing.
at Spin, that like ping pong
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, of
thing.
course.
Yeah.
So was it a ping pong party or was it a party for something else that happened to be at Spin?
I mean, if it's a party at Spin, aren't they all
Yeah, it's
ping pong
kind of a ping pong
parties?
party. That's true.
But,
Yeah.
it wasn't really like we're all going to play ping pong. It was like a party in their back room or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was when? Like how long ago was that?
That was 2018 or 17,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool. That's awesome. I feel like that's honestly because I know it's 2024, but COVID, I still feel like it's 2020. The whole 2020 to
Yeah.
2024 never happened. So I hear 2018 and I'm like, oh, that was 2 years ago. you
Yeah. It
know?
feels like it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's awesome, man. Well, congratulations. Do you think that Jacksonville is the long-term home?
It's something we talked a lot about.
Yeah.
Not sure yet. It's great out here. I think it's like we live a block off the beach and the
Oh
weather's
my
great. I
God.
can go walk around, and I've got a pool. which is
Oh,
nice. Like
love
you're never
that.
going to get that in SF.
Yeah, right.
And so, it's a really nice area. Whether we stay here long term, I think it depends on kind of how things go.
Sure, sure. Um, does this make you a Jaguars fan?
I mean, I guess I have to be.
Kind
I'm
of.
first and foremost. I grew up in Seattle, so I've got to be
Right.
a
I was gonna say
Seahawks
you,
fan.
you kind of
So
you can't give that up. You
no,
know.
no, I
Yeah.
will always root for Seattle over every other team, but
Yeah.
not. I mean, I've been following the Jags since I've moved here, and I'll root for
Sure.
them since I'm
Yeah.
here. But if they played Seattle, I would be rooting for Seattle.
Yeah. We know where the alliances are. That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Um. Well, I appreciate you talking about the last, 15 years. I'd love to take the Wayback Machine even a little bit further. Talk to me about your favorite CMC class, and I'll just share with you. You're welcome to say multiple answers. I'm not gonna, hold you to one, but maybe think back. What were the ones that made the biggest impact on you?
Oh man, like I took a lot of psychology courses, so psych
Hmm.
major, econ psych or whatever, the typical CMC thing.
Yeah.
And so, they all helped a lot, but I think my favorite course was probably statistics with the
Hmm.
Yaron Raviv. That guy's
Hmm.
great. He's a
Hmm.
hilarious guy. And that was on the econ side of things.
Yeah. Because weren't you in econometrics like TA or tutor or something?
No, I was not. I took econometrics, but I wasn't a TA, I
Not a
don't
TA.
think.
Okay, sorry. I have some vague memory of being in an econometrics class with you, and I feel like you also partially taught it, but maybe that's just a fake memory at this point.
Maybe I helped
Um,
you
that
with your
that
homework
I
or
wouldn't
something.
doubt. That I wouldn't doubt. Um, okay, so psychology. That's interesting. And that is a very like common, econ and anything is very common CMC.
Yeah.
Um, but stats always a good answer. Always a good answer. And was at Claremont, not at Mud or anything like that?
Yeah, that was econ stats with the air on Revive,
Got
which
it.
was just a lot of fun.
So my follow up question, and I can probably guess where you'd go with this, is your favorite professor.
I mean, he was great. Yaron was great, but I also, the psych professors were also great. Ron Reggio, Jay
Yeah,
Conger, Susan
yeah,
Murphy were
yeah,
all amazing.
yeah. Are you in touch with any of those professors still?
Every once in a while,
Yeah,
and then I obviously have tried to help or stay close to KLI, so I see them,
sure.
occasionally there and whatnot. But uh, it's been a few months probably.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's been either a few months or a few years for all of us, to be honest with you. But it's always nice to, whatever, do what you can and help. Um, Switching gears from academia to maybe something a little bit more fun. Favorite CMC party? And by the way, CMC, it could be any of the five C's. So if you want to talk about a Harvey Mudd party, I'm all open
Man,
to it.
like I feel like that was such a long time ago. I don't remember them all. There were so many. Any TNC or apartment party, I feel like
Yeah.
was really fun. Trick or drink at Harvey Mudd.
Oh, trick or drink's a good answer.
That was a really fun one.
That's
That
a
was
really
my
good
first
answer.
introduction to a daiquiri, which I was like, this is great.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So
Um, the TNCs, I always feel like they were sort of the perfect Claremont party because they were like very chill, hosted by a different dorm. You're going to see your friends. It's Thursday, which is the start of the weekend. You're not the first person to say trick or drink though. Other
oh
people have
really?
made mention that. Yeah. So glad to hear
Very
that.
memorable apparently.
Yeah.
Harvey
Yeah.
Mudd knows how to do it.
Yeah. I feel like though from the Harvey Mudd canon, it's like foam party or slippery when wet.
I didn't like those.
I mean, they were
That felt
they
a
were like
little,
disgusting, to be
yeah.
clear, but they were big ones.
That's fair. Getting soap in your eyes though.
Yeah, yeah, a little gross, little
Yeah.
gross. Um, yeah. So then, not just favorite party, but since this is a reunion episode, talk about some of your favorite memories. And could be anything, can be multiple. But when you look back and think about your fondest times at Claremont, give me some snapshots.
And I think just hanging out. Like, we went to a school where you could go sunbathe, uh, and then go to class like 5 minutes later. That
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the greatest memories that I still have are, probably walking on the dive team with Greg Hall. That was a
Yeah.
lot of fun with no experience. Like, I can't
Yeah.
believe they let me do that. Um, I think getting Darren to do a beer bong where he dropped it before class, I think actually before stats, where he had never done it before. And he's like, I was like, whatever you do, don't let go. And
Yeah.
he started and he immediately let go and took 3 steps back and it spilled all over everyone else. But that was fun too.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fountain thesis party, that was great.
Another classic. Another
Yeah.
classic. Yeah. It's funny, on a different episode, you'll have to listen in, but you were mentioned as a professor called you out, um, for having walked on the diving team as like an example of like, hey, you should just go and try things in your life that you might not have any experience in doing. So I'm glad to hear that it still matters to you today.
Yeah, it was one of the best times. Just
Do you still dive?
I haven't in a while.
Yeah.
I'm probably very bad at it now. I wasn't good to begin with. Like, 3 months of diving doesn't make me an expert in anything. Uh,
More than I can say that I have. Right. So some
you know
sort of
what's
80/20 rule applies.
what's funny is there aren't very many diving boards anymore because they're such a liability.
Oh,
You actually don't
interesting.
see them very often.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, did you just do the springboard or were you also, I don't know what it'd be called. Like it's like the 10
The
meter, but
platform.
flat. Yeah. Platform. Thank you.
No, it was just springboard. That was all that we had there.
Is there like an athletic peak that you had then at Claremont where you're like, man, that one meet against Oxy, I like did a triple backflip or whatever.
I mean, I feel like every meet it was like trying not to get disqualified for doing the wrong dive. Like, but I think the best was that year. The team, I believe, won SKYAC,
Oh,
and so
amazing.
I get to say that I was part of that team.
Sky
I
champion.
scored
Hell yeah.
points.
Yeah.
Um,
Hell yeah.
so, I mean, I think there were like in the top 16 divers scored points or something like that, and there were like 16 people.
Hey,
So
hey, every point counts, man. Every point
still
counts.
counts.
You're in the record books, you know?
When am I going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Oh man. Actually, speaking of which, we're getting our first John Ferranda told me Larry Wang is our first inductee into the Athletic Hall of Fame. So
That's
shout out
very
Larry Wang.
deserving. He's
Yeah, very deserving.
way better than I am
No,
at
he was like a
his
national
sport.
champion our freshman year, but hey, maybe one day,
Yeah,
Dan, I can see you up there. I can see you
yeah.
up there.
I've got 3 more years of eligibility. Maybe I'll go back.
Oh, amazing. I love it. You should. You really should. um well, that's great. That's really awesome. Yeah, I feel like I agree with you. There were like so many, like not many schools where you can go lay in the sun and then walk straight into class, or like
Yeah,
your dorm room opens up to the outside,
yeah,
and then also just the added thing of like, I feel like everybody at Claremont was just friends, not to say you didn't have your own friend groups or whatnot, but like, I saw you in SF when I lived in SF, but it's not like we talk every day. And for the record, the moment I texted you, hey man, would you be willing to do this? You got back to me in under 30 seconds for sure. And so I'm grateful for that. And I feel like, honestly, it's a testament to you. I also just feel like it's a testament to Claremont and like, hey, people still talk 15 years out and whatnot. So it was a special place. It was a really special place.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Last 2 questions. Who do you keep in touch with? And maybe who do you want to give some shout outs to if they're listening?
Let's see. The people I keep in touch with, Kylie,
Yeah.
also from,
Yeah.
and then a lot of people I lived with and hung out with, Alex Dunn, Ben Miller.
Alex Dunn. Yeah. Shout out
Uh,
Alex Dunn, man.
yeah, he's getting married
Oh my God.
soon.
Congrats, Alex Dunn.
Yeah. Both Bens, Ben Beller, Ben Fox,
Oh, for
Darren
sure. Yeah.
mentioned him.
Dude, Ben Fox, man, he's a great Twitter follow for those that don't follow him on Twitter already.
Gambling expert.
Gambling expert. Yeah, he's been a cool guy to follow. And I'm sorry, I missed you on the other Ben. Who was that?
Oh, Beller. Yeah.
Oh, no way. Oh, shout out Ben Beller. Yeah.
And then Max Davison.
Of course.
And then I think some of the women, Heather, Mara,
Of course. Shout out Heather Mara. Yeah, Jess Gould. Amazing.
Naomi and Becca.
Of course. Yeah.
Kind of we're all in like a text group together as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Let them know I say hello. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Will do.
Yeah. Well, then speaking of which, last and final question, if you guys are in a text message thread, I'm asking everybody because I'm hoping that these episodes sort of inspire people to reach out to each other and get reconnected and whatnot. So finish this sentence. Someone should slide into my DMs to chat about.
I'm married, man. No, I'm just, I don't know, whatever. Tech, startups, anything you want.
Yeah.
Shit. People message me all the time.
Awesome.
I'm happy to chat.
Cool.
You sent me a text message and I was like, yeah, let's do this.
Dude, you got back to me right away and I'm so grateful. And I, careful what you wish for because I might just DM you again about Jacksonville Jaguars living in Florida, what it's like to have a pool in your backyard, and whatnot. But dude, thank you so much for the time. This was great chatting, great catching up. People should reach out to you to talk about tech, Jacksonville Jaguars, anything else.
Anything.
Thanks so much for making the time, man.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation.
Cool. Take care.
See ya.